The night sky over rural Oregon on July 2, 2025, shimmered with an unnatural glow, the stars obscured by a pulsing orb of light that streaked across the horizon. In the small town of Ashland, nestled between pine forests and the winding Rogue River, 32-year-old Mara Kessler sat alone in her cabin, the silence broken only by the crackle of her fireplace. Widowed 2 years ago after her husband, Ethan, died in a car accident, Mara had retreated to this solitude, her days filled with the hum of her late husband's old radio and the weight of memories. Her dark hair fell in loose waves, framing hazel eyes that held a quiet resilience, though tonight they flickered with unease as the light outside intensified. The orb crashed into the woods a mile from her cabin, a thunderous boom shaking the windows. Mara grabbed a flashlight, her heart racing, and ventured out, the damp earth squelching under her boots. The crash site revealed a smoldering crater, its edges glowing with an eerie blue hue. Amid the debris lay a figure, humanoid yet otherworldly, its skin shimmering like liquid silver, its eyes closed. As she approached, it stirred, its form shifting into a perfect replica of Ethan, down to the scar above his left eyebrow. Mara stumbled back, her breath catching. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and dread. The being opened its eyes, deep luminous orbs that weren't Ethan's, and spoke in a voice that echoed with an alien cadence. "I am not him, but I take his form to understand. I need your help." Mara's mind reeled, her flashlight trembling as she processed the impossibility. The creature explained it had come from a distant star, its ship damaged by a military satellite, forcing an emergency landing. It had scanned Ethan's image from a photo in her wallet, fallen during her approach, and replicated him to communicate. "They will come for me," it warned, its gaze shifting to the horizon where headlights flickered. "The government. I must reach the coast." Mara hesitated, memories of Ethan flooding back, his laughter, his touch, the life they'd planned. This wasn't him, yet the face was a cruel mirror. "Why me?" she asked, her voice breaking. The being, which called itself Kale, tilted its head. "Your heart carries loss. You understand survival." Before she could respond, the sound of helicopters grew louder, their searchlights slicing through the trees. Panic surged and Mara made a snap decision. "Come with me," she said, pulling Kale toward her truck. The drive was tense, the forest road slick with rain as Mara navigated toward the highway. Kale sat silently, its hands studying the dashboard, its presence both alien and familiar. She glanced at it, the Ethan-like face stirring conflicting emotions, grief, curiosity, fear. "What are you?" she asked. Kale's response was cryptic. "A messenger. My kind seeks connection, not conquest. But your world fears difference." The radio crackled, intercepting a military broadcast. "Unidentified object down near Ashland. Containment team deployed. Suspect civilian involvement." Mara's grip tightened on the wheel. They reached a gas station, its neon sign flickering in the downpour. Mara filled the tank while Kale watched, its eyes reflecting the light like twin moons. A trucker eyed them suspiciously, muttering about government drones, and Mara hurried Kale back to the truck. As they pulled away, a black SUV tailed them, its lights dim but persistent. "They've found us," Kale said, its voice calm yet urgent. Mara's mind raced. Where could they go? The coast was days away, and the military wouldn't stop. Back at the cabin, agents had already arrived, combing the crash site. Lead Agent Dr. Helen Voss, a stern woman with a PhD in xenobiology, analyzed the debris. "This isn't just a meteor," she noted, holding a shard that hummed with energy. "It's intelligent. We need it alive." Her team tracked Mara's truck via satellite, closing in. Voss's orders were clear. Capture the alien, neutralize the civilian. Mara veered off the highway onto a logging road, the truck bouncing over ruts. Kale placed a hand on her arm, its touch warm and electric. "I can guide us," it said, projecting a mental map of escape routes. She followed its instincts, the SUV losing ground in the dense forest. At a secluded rest stop, they stopped to regroup. Mara's hand shook as she offered Kale water, which it declined. "I draw energy from light," it explained, absorbing the faint glow of her phone screen. Their bond grew in those quiet moments. Mara shared stories of Ethan, his love for stargazing, his dream of a simple life, while Kale listened, its form softening with empathy. Your kind feels deeply, it said. I learn from you. She laughed bitterly. And I'm learning to trust an alien who looks like my dead husband. The humor eased her tension, but the SUV's return loomed on the horizon. As dawn broke, the pursuit intensified. Helicopters buzzed overhead, and Mara knew they couldn't outrun them forever. Cale suggested a detour to a friend of Ethan's, a reclusive mechanic named Ray, who lived off-grid. He'll help, Cale insisted, using Ethan's memories to guide them. Mara nodded, her resolve hardening. This wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding the connection she felt, a thread linking her past to this strange future. The truck rattled toward Ray's hideout, the forest thinning as the coast drew nearer. Mara glanced at Cale, its Ethan-like face now a comfort rather than a torment. Whatever happens, she said, we're in this together. Cale smiled, a gesture it had learned from her. And the journey continued, a fragile alliance against a world that wouldn't understand. The pre-dawn stillness of Madison, Wisconsin, on November 1984 hung heavy as Jenny Hayden clutched the steering wheel of her station wagon, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The alien, now perfectly mimicking her deceased husband Scott's form, complete with his lopsided grin and sandy hair, sat beside her, his luminous eyes scanning the dashboard with childlike curiosity. The night before, he had crash-landed in her living room, his glowing sphere transforming him into Scott, and their frantic escape from the military had left her breathless. Now, with the government closing in, they sped toward an uncertain destination, the radio crackling with static and the occasional garbled warning, subject last seen heading west. All units, pursue with caution. Jenny's mind raced, her auburn hair plastered to her forehead with sweat despite the chill. She glanced at Starman, as she'd begun to call him in her thoughts, his imitation of Scott both a comfort and a torment. Where are we going? She demanded, her voice tight with fear. Starman turned to her, his voice a soft echo of Scott's. A place of light. My people will come for me there. You must take me to the crater in Arizona. Jenny's heart sank. Arizona was over 2,000 miles away, a journey she couldn't fathom with the military on their tail. That's crazy, she muttered. They'll catch us before we're out of the state. The first sign of pursuit came at a roadside diner outside Las Vegas, Nevada, where they stopped for gas. Starman marveled at the neon lights, his fingers tracing the air as if memorizing their glow. Jenny filled the tank, her hands shaking when a black sedan pulled up, its occupants, two men in suits, watching her too closely. We need to move, she hissed, ushering Starman back to the car. As they peeled out, the sedan followed, its headlights a persistent glare in the rearview mirror. Starman placed a hand on her arm, its warmth steadying her. I can help, he said, and with a flicker of concentration, he caused a deer to dart across the road, forcing the pursuers to swerve and crash into a ditch. Jenny stared, stunned, as they sped away. Their journey took them through the deserts of Utah, the vast emptiness a stark contrast to the chaos behind them. Starman's innocence shone through as he tasted a candy bar from a gas station, his face lighting up with delight. Sweet, he said, offering her a piece. Jenny managed a weak smile, her exhaustion deepening. She shared bits of her life with Scott. Their quiet nights, his love for astronomy, the baby they'd lost. Her words a cathartic release. Starman listened, his mimicry of Scott's expressions growing more natural. I feel him, he said. Through you. The admission stirred something in Jenny, a flicker of connection amid her grief. The government's net tightened. In a small Nevada town they encountered Sheriff George Fox, a gruff but decent man who pulled them over for a broken taillight. Starman's otherworldly behavior, his inability to understand simple questions, raised suspicion. As Fox radioed for backup, Starman used his powers again, reviving a dead deer on the roadside to prove his intent wasn't harm. The sight shocked Fox, who let them go with a warning, but not before noting their license plate. You're in trouble, he muttered, his eyes lingering on Starman's unnatural calm. By nightfall they reached a motel in Arizona, the neon vacancy sign buzzing faintly. Jenny collapsed onto the bed, her body aching, while Starman stood by the window, absorbing the moonlight. My time is short, he said. 3 days until they come. Jenny frowned. Who's they? Starman explained his people had sent a rescue ship, But he needed to reach the crater by then, or he'd be stranded. The revelation fueled her resolve, though fear gnawed at her. She cooked a meager meal from a can, the domestic act grounding her as Starman watched, learning. The next morning their respite ended. A military helicopter buzzed overhead, and a team led by Dr. Mark Sherman, a scientist obsessed with capturing Starman, closed in. Jenny and Starman fled in the car, the chase escalating as a truck rammed them off the road. The crash left the vehicle smoking, but Starman emerged unscathed, pulling Jenny free. "Run!" he urged, and they darted into the desert, the helicopter's spotlight tracking them. Sherman's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "Stand down, Mrs. Hayden. Hand over the subject." Exhausted, they hid in a cave, the cool darkness a temporary shield. Jenny's leg bled from the crash, and Starman tended to it with a glowing orb from his hand, healing her instantly. "Why help me?" she asked, tears in her eyes. Starman's response was simple. "You are kind. Like him." The moment deepened their bond, his alien nature blending with human empathy. Outside, the military set up a perimeter, their radios crackling with plans to flush them out. As night fell, Starman revealed a final plan. "I can signal them," he said, creating a miniature sphere that floated upward. Jenny watched, awestruck, as it burst into a beacon, visible for miles. The military spotted it, and the chase resumed, forcing them toward the crater. Jenny's resolve hardened. She'd see this through, not just for Starman, but for the memory of Scott, whose face now carried a soul she'd come to care for. The desert night of Arizona on November 1984 stretched endlessly before Jenny Hayden and Starman, the cool sand crunching under their boots as they stumbled toward the meteor crater. The military's helicopters buzzed overhead, their searchlights slicing through the darkness, while Dr. Mark Sherman's voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Mrs. Hayden, this is your last chance. Surrender the subject, or we will use force." Jenny's chest heaved, her auburn hair tangled with sweat and dust, her legs still tingling from Starman's healing touch. Beside her, Starman, his form a perfect echo of her late husband Scott, moved with an otherworldly grace, his luminous eyes fixed on the horizon where his rescue ship would appear. They had escaped the cave at dawn, the beacon Starman created drawing both his people and the military closer. A stolen pickup truck had carried them partway, its engine groaning under the strain, until a roadblock forced them to abandon it. Now on foot, they navigated the rugged terrain, the crater, a vast, glowing scar in the earth, visible in the distance. "We're almost there," Starman said, his voice steady despite the danger. Jenny nodded, her resolve hardening. "I'm not letting them take you," she whispered, gripping his hand, the warmth of his alien skin a lifeline. The pursuit intensified. A military jeep roared up, its lights blinding them, and soldiers spilled out, rifles raised. Starman reacted instantly, creating a shimmering barrier that deflected their shots, the energy crackling in the air. "Run!" he urged, pulling Jenny toward a ravine. They slid down the rocky slope, the helicopter's downdraft whipping sand into their faces. Sherman, his face taut with determination, directed his team from the air. "Contain the area. We need that specimen alive." His obsession with studying Starman's biology drove him, but Jenny's desperation fueled her escape. In the ravine they paused, breathless. Jenny's hands trembled as she checked a map Ethan had once marked with stargazing spots, now their guide. Starman pointed to a ridge. "Beyond that, the crater. My signal will reach them there." She nodded, but the sound of barking dogs echoed closer, the military deploying trackers. Starman closed his eyes, concentrating, and a flock of birds erupted from the brush, confusing the dogs and buying them time. Jenny marveled at his power, her fear mingling with awe. "How do you do that?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I align with life. It responds." As they crested the ridge, the crater loomed, a massive depression glowing with an ethereal light, its edges lined with crystalline formations. Starman knelt, pressing his hands to the ground, and a low hum filled the air as he sent a final signal. Jenny watched, tears welling, knowing their time was short. "Will I see you again?" she asked, her voice breaking. Starman turned to her, his Scott-like face softening. "My people will remember you, and I will carry you with me." He handed her a small orb, its surface pulsing. "For your child," he said. referencing the pregnancy test she'd hidden, now a promise of new life. The rescue ship descended, a brilliant sphere of light that silenced the helicopter's engines and scattered the soldiers. Sherman shouted orders, but his team froze, awestruck as the craft hovered. Starman embraced Jenny, his touch lingering, and whispered, "You are not alone." Then, with a final nod, he stepped into the light, his form dissolving into the ship's glow. The craft descended, leaving a trail of stardust, and the military stood helpless, Sherman's plans thwarted. Jenny sank to her knees, the orb warm in her hand, her sobs mixing with the desert wind. Sherman approached, his expression a mix of frustration and resignation. "You've cost us a scientific breakthrough," he said. She glared at him. "You'd have killed him." He sighed, ordering his team to stand down, the chase over. A jeep arrived to take her back, but her thoughts were with Starman, and the life growing inside her, a gift from his kindness. Back in Madison, weeks later, Jenny sat in her living room, the orb glowing softly on the table. The military had left her alone, Sherman's report deeming her uninvolved. She placed a hand on her stomach, a smile breaking through her grief. The phone rang, her mother-in-law, worried but relieved. "You're okay?" she asked. Jenny nodded, though alone. "I'm more than okay," she replied, her voice steady with hope. Outside, a star pulsed brighter than the rest, a silent farewell from the cosmos. The crisp December air of Madison, Wisconsin, on December 1984 settled over Jenny Hayden as she stood on her porch. The orb Starman had given her glowing faintly in her palm. The military had retreated after the crater incident, Dr. Mark Sherman's team leaving with little more than a stern warning and a sealed report. The house felt emptier now, the echoes of Starman's presence, his mimicry of Scott, his gentle words, lingering in the furniture and the crackling radio. At 34, Jenny's life had shifted irreversibly, her auburn hair framing a face marked by grief yet softened by a new hope. The orb pulsed warmly, a reminder of the life growing inside her, a gift from the alien who had reshaped her world. Weeks after the crater, Jenny struggled to reclaim normalcy. She returned to her job at the botanical garden, her hands tending roses with a mechanical rhythm, but her mind wandered to the desert nights. The pregnancy test, once a private sorrow after losing her and Scott's child, now carried a miracle Starman's DNA, merged with hers, promising a child born of two worlds. Her mother-in-law, Margaret, visited often, her concern palpable. "You've been through too much, Jenny," she said one afternoon, her voice trembling as she stirred tea. "Are you sure you're okay?" Jenny nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm stronger than I look," she replied, the orb hidden in her pocket, a secret she wasn't ready to share. The orb became her companion, its light intensifying at night, casting soft patterns on the walls. One evening, as snow began to fall, it projected a holographic image, a star map, its constellations unfamiliar yet beautiful. Jenny traced the lines, her heart aching for Starman. "Are you out there?" she whispered, and the image flickered as if responding. She recorded the patterns, unsure why, but feeling a pull to understand. The next day, she visited a local astronomer, Dr. Elaine Carter, a friend of Scott's. Elaine's eyes widened at the map. "These aren't from our sky," she said. "Where did you get this?" Jenny hesitated, then lied. "A dream." Elaine nodded, intrigued, and promised to analyze it, unaware of the truth. Rumors persisted. A tabloid article claimed a UFO sighting in Arizona, and Jenny's name surfaced, though unconfirmed. Sherman, now demoted but still obsessed, tracked her movements, his agents lurking near the garden. One night, a car followed her home, its lights dim but menacing. Panic surged, but the orb glowed brighter, and the car veered off, as if deterred by an unseen force. Jenny wondered if Starman's influence lingered, protecting her from afar. She confided in Margaret, who listened with a mix of disbelief and acceptance. "If Scott's out there in some way," Margaret said, "he'd want you safe." The words bolstered Jenny, her resolve growing. As her pregnancy progressed, Jenny's body changed, subtle shifts she couldn't explain. Her energy surged at night, her senses sharpening, and she dreamed of vast skies and Starman's voice. A doctor, puzzled by the rapid development, suggested tests, but Jenny refused, guarding her secret. She moved to a smaller cabin outside town, seeking solitude, and there, with Margaret's help, prepared a nursery. The orb's light began to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat, a connection she felt deeply. One night it projected a message, symbols she couldn't read but intuited as a lullaby, calming her fears. The military's interest resurfaced. Sherman, now working privately, contacted Jenny, offering money for the orb. "It's not just a trinket," he insisted over the phone. "It could change humanity." Jenny hung up, her anger flaring. She sought Elaine again, who had decoded part of the star map, linking it to a region near Orion. "It's a signal," Elaine said. "Someone's watching us." Jenny's pulse quickened, wondering if Starman's people monitored her. She kept the orb close, its warmth a shield. Months passed and Jenny's due date neared. Margaret stayed with her, their bond strengthening. One stormy night, labor began, the orb glowing intensely. The birth was swift, aided by an inexplicable energy, perhaps Starman's legacy. She named the boy Ethan after his father, his eyes a striking silver that faded to hazel within hours. Margaret wept, seeing Scott in him, though Jenny knew the truth. The orb dimmed, its purpose fulfilled, but a faint hum remained, a whisper of the stars. Years later, in 1987, Ethan was a curious 3-year-old, his laughter filling the cabin. Jenny taught him about the stars, using the map as a guide. One evening a meteor shower lit the sky, and Ethan pointed, saying, "Daddy's home." Jenny froze, then smiled, holding him close. The orb, now a keepsake, pulsed once more, and she felt a peace she hadn't known since Scott's death. Sherman's agents faded into memory, and the world moved on, unaware of the child who carried a piece of the cosmos. The summer sun of 1992 bathed Madison, Wisconsin in a golden haze, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers as 8-year-old Ethan Hayden raced across the field behind their cabin. His dark hair, inherited from Jenny, caught the light, but his hazel eyes, flecked with silver, held an otherworldly spark, a legacy of Starman. Jenny, now 42, watched from the porch, her auburn hair streaked with gray, the orb, a silent sentinel, resting on a table beside her. 8 years had passed since Ethan's birth, his presence a blend of joy and mystery, his quirks hinting at the alien DNA woven into his being. The cabin, expanded with Margaret's help, stood as a sanctuary, its walls adorned with star charts Elaine Carter had gifted them. Ethan's abilities surfaced early. At 3, he'd calmed a neighbor's panicked dog with a touch, its growls turning to whimpers. By 5, he'd predicted a storm, pointing to the sky hours before the first drop fell. Now at 8, he could manipulate small objects, pebbles lifting and spinning in the air, though he didn't understand it. "Mom, why do things move when I'm mad?" he asked one day, his voice tinged with confusion. Jenny knelt, brushing his hair back. "It's a special gift," she said, her heart aching. "From your other dad." She told him stories of Scott and the star visitor, weaving a tale of love and sacrifice, omitting the full truth to shield him. Margaret, now in her 60s, remained a steady presence, her skepticism fading into acceptance. "He's got Scott's smile," she'd say, though she noticed Ethan's silver-flecked eyes during quiet moments. One afternoon she caught him reviving a wilted flower, its petals unfurling under his touch. "Jenny, this isn't normal," she whispered, fear in her voice. Jenny nodded, her resolve firm. "It's who he is. We'll protect him." They agreed to limit his exposure, homeschooling him with Elaine's help, who marveled at his intuitive grasp of astronomy. "He's like a living telescope," Elaine said, her excitement tempered by caution. The orb, dormant for years, stirred again. One night it projected a new star map, its light dancing across the ceiling. Ethan giggled, tracing the patterns, but Jenny froze. New constellations, different from the 1984 map, suggested a message. She contacted Elaine, who analyzed it remotely, her voice crackling over the phone. This could be a response, a call. But from where? Jenny kept it secret, fearing government interest, though Sherman's shadow loomed. Rumors of his private research persisted, and a letter arrived unsigned, hinting at the Hayden child. She burned it, her hands trembling, and installed security cameras. Ethan's powers grew. At a park, he accidentally lifted a bench during a tantrum, startling onlookers. Jenny whisked him away, her heart pounding, and they moved deeper into the woods, building a secluded life. He learned to control his abilities, summoning light, calming animals, but isolation weighed on him. "Why can't I have friends?" he asked, tears in his eyes. Jenny hugged him, her voice breaking. "You're special, Ethan. The world isn't ready." She taught him meditation, using the orb's hum to focus his energy, their bond deepening. Trouble brewed. In 1993, a black SUV appeared near their property, its occupants watching from a distance. Jenny recognized Sherman's tactics, his obsession undeterred. One night they broke in, but Ethan's instinct flared. Light burst from the orb, blinding the intruders who fled. Jenny called Elaine, who urged caution. "They'll come back," Elaine warned. "We need to understand his potential." They devised a plan. Ethan would practice in secret while Jenny sought allies. She contacted George Fox, the Nevada sheriff from 1984, now retired. "I owe you," he said over the phone. "I'll help keep them off your trail." Ethan's dreams grew vivid, starscapes, a voice calling his name. At 9, he woke Jenny, describing a figure like Scott. He said, "Come home," Ethan whispered. Jenny's breath caught, wondering if Starman's people reached out. The orb pulsed, projecting a beacon upward, visible only to them. Margaret, skeptical but supportive, suggested a trip to Arizona, to the crater. "Maybe it's a sign," she said. Jenny agreed, packing discreetly, the family embarking on a cross-country journey in a rented van. The trip was tense. In Colorado, a roadblock forced a detour, Sherman's agents close behind. Ethan's power saved them again, guiding them through a storm with uncanny precision. At the crater, now a tourist site, they stood under the stars. Ethan touched the ground and the orb glowed, a sphere rising to join the constellations. "They see me," he said, smiling. Jenny wept, feeling Starman's presence. The military arrived, but Fox's intervention, calling in favors, held them off. Sherman, furious, retreated, his evidence dismissed. Back home, Ethan's abilities stabilized, his connection to the stars a quiet strength. Jenny wrote a journal, detailing his heritage, sealing it with the orb. In 1995, at 11, Ethan built a telescope, his first solo project, gazing at the sky with Jenny. "Will I meet him?" he asked. She squeezed his hand. "Maybe one day," she said, hope in her eyes. The orb hummed, a promise of horizons beyond, as the Hayden family forged a future under the stars. The autumn leaves of Madison, Wisconsin, in 2002 painted the landscape in hues of amber and crimson, a serene backdrop to the quiet life of 18-year-old Ethan Hayden. His lanky frame moved with a grace that belied his teenage awkwardness, his hazel eyes, still flecked with silver, reflecting the starlit sky he often studied from the cabin's expanded observatory. Jenny, now 52, watched him through the window, her auburn hair fully gray, the orb resting on a shelf like a family heirloom. 15 years had passed since Ethan's birth, his powers maturing into a blend of wonder and responsibility, while the world remained oblivious to the cosmic thread in his DNA. The cabin, fortified with Margaret's love and Elaine Carter's guidance, stood as a fortress of secrets. Ethan's abilities had evolved. By 14, he could levitate small objects with precision, his focus sharpening under Jenny's tutelage. At 16, he healed a wounded hawk, its wing mending in minutes, a feat that left him shaken. "It's getting stronger," he told Jenny one night, his voice low. She nodded, her hand on the orb which pulsed faintly. "It's part of you," she said. "From Starman, your other father." She'd shared more of the truth over the years, framing it as a gift, though she shielded him from Sherman's lingering threat. Margaret, now 72 and frail, often reminisced about Scott, her eyes misty as she watched Ethan's silver-flecked gaze. The orb's activity increased. In 2000, it projected a new message, symbols pulsing in rhythm with Ethan's heartbeat, suggesting a call from the stars. Elaine, still a trusted ally, decoded fragments, linking them to Orion's nebula. "It's a summons," she said over a secure call, "but it's risky to respond." Jenny hesitated, fearing exposure, but Ethan's curiosity grew. At 17, he built a transmitter from scavenged parts, its signal weak but intentional. One night it answered, a faint hum, a star flaring brighter. "They know me," Ethan whispered, awe in his voice. Jenny's heart sank, knowing it might draw attention. Trouble arrived in 2001. Sherman, now a private contractor with a shadowy network, tracked the signal. His agents raided a local supply store where Ethan bought parts, their questions probing. Ginny moved them to a remote cabin, but Sherman's drones followed, their buzz a constant threat. One evening, an agent confronted Ethan, demanding the orb. Ethan's instinct flared. Light erupted, blinding the man who fled. Ginny called George Fox, now 68 and retired, who used old contacts to disrupt Sherman's surveillance. "Your family," Fox said gruffly. "I'll hold them off." Ethan's dreams intensified. At 18, he saw Starman, his face Scott's face, guiding him to a place of light. The orb projected a full hologram, a figure speaking in an alien tongue, translated by Ethan's intuition. "Return when ready. Your legacy awaits." Ginny wept, realizing his destiny might lie beyond Earth. Margaret, sensing her end, urged action. "Let him go if he must," she said, her voice weak. She passed in her sleep that winter, leaving Jenny and Ethan to mourn, their bond tightening. In 2002, Ethan's powers peaked. He levitated the cabin's roof during a storm, saving them from collapse, but the energy drained him. Jenny sought Elaine, who suggested a test. Ethan sent a focused signal to the stars. The response was immediate. A meteor shower, its patterns matching the orb's map. Sherman's team intercepted it, launching a full assault. Helicopters descended, agents surrounding the cabin. Ethan, panicked, created a barrier, but it faltered. Jenny grabbed the orb, its light amplifying his power, and they fled into the woods. The chase led to a clearing, the sky ablaze with meteors. Sherman emerged, his gun raised. "Give me the boy," he shouted. Ethan, exhausted, collapsed, but the orb glowed, projecting a shield. A sphere descended, Starman's rescue ship, its light enveloping them. Sherman fired, but the beam deflected, and he fell, his network crumbling. The figure from Ethan's dreams appeared, Starman's form, welcoming him. "Your time is now," it said. Ginny clung to Ethan, tears streaming. "I can't lose you too," she sobbed. He hugged her. "I'll come back, Mom. I promise." The ship rose, Ethan stepping in, his silver eyes meeting hers. The orb dimmed, its purpose complete, and the craft vanished, leaving a trail of stardust. Ginny sank to her knees, the forest silent. Days later, a letter arrived, Fox's farewell, noting Sherman's death and the case's closure. Ginny returned to the cabin, the orb a memory, and gazed at the stars. In 2003, a meteor flared, and Ethan's voice echoed in her mind. "I'm home." She smiled, her legacy secure, the cosmos whispering back.